Welcome to the Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Refracted Curvature, Brian's Logic, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
One and all, welcome.
Hello! Hey, good
Don't forget Eli.
Did I miss Eli? Where's Eli?
Yeah.
Oh, he's in the Discord server.
No, I'm in the Discord.
Yeah, he's just one of the many people in Discord. Till he joins the panel. No, he's good.
Eli was the main guy to help me figure out how to get on G+.
Are you a mod
Thank
in
you,
there?
Eli.
Are you a mod in there, Eli?
I am, yeah.
Then you should be hustling people off mute, so I'm not being moaned at.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm only joking.
Who needs to be off mute?
No, I get complacent because normally Righteous Force is hanging around, and I didn't. Once he's there, I'm like, oh, right, I don't have to pay attention to who's on and off mute in Discord. Just let it fly, and everything works out. And then occasionally, I won't pay too much attention. It'll get to 10 minutes before the end of the show, and I'll just look down the list to see if he's unmuted, and half the people in there are still on server mute. Anyway, this is not the way to start a live show. We're talking about shop. My bad to all of you live audience members tuning in on this most exciting show. We're the pinnacle of flat earth debate argumentation, and we want to share that with you. So we're going to do a bit of a thing called housekeeping, and that is where we go through the most important details to date on this discussion, starting with any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle from a curved baseline.
No, I mean, I actually think that the question is kind of ridiculous. It's like, you can never do that. It's impossible.
Yeah,
If you could just
go, John, go.
If you could just ignore that we get our measurements from a flat plane, I can then describe to you how it's a sphere.
But we do in fact gain the measurements from a flat plane. Earth is actually observably, measurably, navigatably flat, and the elevation angle measurement proves that.
No.
Hello.
There's no bright red.
Prilty? How do you say that? People's names are weird. The guy with the TM, the trademark at the end of your name. Did you want to add something, or are you just hot micing?
Sorry, I was hot micing. Ignore me.
What are you doing, Eli?
Flatty, Nathan. Flatty.
Can't get the help these days. So, elevation angle measurement proves Earth is flat. Anyone got anything to add? If not, we'll move on to Earth curve, as it's claimed to be the proof of Earth being a sphere.
I kind of have. It is relevant. Like the fact that we're dealing with people who are unwilling to accept that. There's an interview. It's only a couple of minutes long. It was like from 1984, and there's the ex-KGB guy. He claimed to be ex-KGB, who defected to the West supposedly. So he was in the US. He was on television in America giving his interview, talking about how long it takes to, let's just say, to give people a paradigm. And he was saying that you could literally, once you give someone a paradigm, you can bring them and show them how they're wrong, bring them to reality, show them to it in a different country, how this is not the case and what they were told is totally untrue. And you can show them there and then that they were wrong. And they still won't believe it, he said, because they have a paradigm. He said, and regardless of how ridiculous it is, they'll come up with something to keep the paradigm alive.
Right.
And he's ex-KGB.
Do you know what? Nick Phuket Word told me the reverse story. So he moved over to Phuket, and I don't know how he met his wife. I don't know that portion of the story to tell it. But on his first bits of romance, going out to the cinema and such, courting, if you will, his now wife, who he's got loads of kids with, he discussed this with her. Well, you know, the Earth's a sphere, right? This is pre-flat Earth, bearing in mind. This is a long time ago. And her positioning to him was, well, why would you think that? And she detailed how she experienced the world as flat. And this crazy notion of being on a sphere was slightly alien to her. So it's the reverse of what you've just described. You know, now, I don't know if Nick went into great detail to try and convince her that she was on a sphere at the time, but the point being that her paradigm was set as, you know, you walk out towards the horizon across a flat plane. And, you know, this guy's crazy notions of being on a sphere Earth were like, oh, really? Is that what you think? Sort of that way round. But yeah, I mean, if you're a subscriber of Nick at Phuket, PH, Phuket Word, then maybe ask him in the comments and he'll let you know. Maybe he'll detail it in one of his vlogs. He certainly talked about it in the interview I did with him anyway, just to plug my interview from back in the day on Flat Earth UK with Nick from Phuket Word.
I do remember something about that, and I do remember something about that story. I think what the difference is that we presume in this, let's say, in Europe and the US, that everywhere else in the world believed in the moon landings. We just presumed that everyone always believed, like that happened, just like we believed. But everyone didn't. We just have this idea. You know, they all believe it as well. Have you asked them? Because obviously, Nick's partner, current partner at the time, girlfriend, like, obviously had no belief in it because she didn't.
Well, that's why
she didn't even think it as a sphere.
Well, one of the reasons I don't know if anybody's noticed this, maybe nobody cares, but I often will say and preface the disclaimer about how many people or who believes the world's a sphere, and I'll say the Western world. Now, my phraseology is well, the reason I say it is this is partly because of it, but I like that to be subliminally cemented in the audience for a couple of different reasons. So, although we've never had it come up naturally, I'll bring it up now. When they describe finding new places, new land, right? What did they describe it as back in the day when they were finding these places? They described them as the new world. So they've gone out, travelled towards the horizon and found new land. The new world. Because presumably, when it was being detailed in those ways, not everyone had the idea of worlds being the lights in the sky. The new worlds were out towards the horizon on a sailing ship. And when you found one, you found a new world, because that's essentially what it was. Now, you expand out, I know we were discussing this in the pre-show in terms of where people's minds go, because Neil asked, why a sphere? I was like, well, because it wraps around itself and it makes any expansion of the land that you might encounter completely pointless, because you'll wrap yourself around yourself when you try and do that. And then they have the navigation where you're travelling in an eastward direction round in circles on a flat map. Well, that deception means that you're never going to want to look towards the horizon and find a new world. Now, land is very important. I think Math Powerland, as his namesake suggests, got it right in this regard. What's it about? Well, it's about math. It's not about physics. We're talking about physics when we talk about the world we live in, but the heliocentric world's not about that. It's about maths. And it's about power. It's about control. When anybody asks why, well, it's about control. It's about keeping you under control. That's what it's about. Power. And land. That's what math, power, land, name suggests. And I completely agree. I think he's got it completely right. Back when they were finding new worlds, that's very lucrative until you realise that the land itself has a value. And then it's suddenly bad news because the value of the land goes down the more you have. Well, back when I was an estate agent, one of my very first jobs, they explained it in no uncertain terms. It's the one thing they're not making any more of. You're not going to get any more land, are you? So what's going to happen to the value? And then they showed me on a graph, it goes up and up and up. And if it goes down, it goes up and up and up and up. And they showed me the trend. You're like, yeah, you look back on any land, the value's going up and up and up. What do you think happens if everybody goes out and looks for new worlds? And suddenly there's a whole bunch of new worlds that nobody's got a price ticket on at all. That's bad news, isn't it? Got a lot less buyers then, haven't you? Anyway.
Well, technically, the price of land doesn't go up. The value of money goes down.
Either way, it's bad news for those of you who are in control of both, isn't it?
Well, I mean,
Yes.
yeah, the thing about it is that if I was to tell someone that there was documentaries years ago, back in the 50s and whatever, that talked about people supposedly exploring Antarctica and coming across a warm, nice place that wasn't icy, that was green and sandy and warm and whatever else, with flowers and I don't know, whatever else. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. Most people would consider that to be, a conspiracy. So I wouldn't say it. I'd never say that, because people would just consider it a conspiracy. I'd have to go find the thing and go through all the nonsense, and then they might believe me, or they might not, even if I show them, because I can't prove it to them.
No, but you don't need to. That's why I say I focus on the new worlds that they have found and are documented that way and haven't made their way down the memory hole. They're part of the current history for whatever reason. But that's a fact. We know that people have found new lands. And what do you know? They're a different type of human living on them in most instances. Now you can progress forward through the horrors, if you want to describe them as that, of just taking people who are existing on the new worlds and just replacing them with whoever you feel is necessary. But that process could have just continued on indefinitely for all we know. Who knows? And irony of ironies, when you've got people that are coming from different lands, let's not call them new worlds, and they come into your country with your imaginary border around it, what do they get called?
Migrants?
Aliens.
Aliens.
Oh, aliens from the new world. Out towards the horizon. That's right. Now, this verbiage is subtly there for a reason, maybe, I don't know. What I do know is what they actually detail things as currently and where they have found new worlds. And I don't have to go against any rhetoric to describe it in that way. Now, 10 years, 100 years, 200 years from now, they might stick all that down the memory hole for all I know. But as it stands, without having to have any challenge from any fundies that might come on the panel, here's your history. Now, do I accept that that's how it's come to pass? No. Do I accept that there are worlds, let's put them in quotation marks, beyond what we know already? Well, yeah, I can get on a plane and experience them. So I know that's the case, and how it's been described is the ones that we know about were expanded out. We've got stories of empires being expanded out into new worlds. So I know that, and I can detail that. Why did it stop? Well, because the map stopped at the sphericity level that we'd go back on ourselves, coincidentally including and encompassing all of the ones we'd found already. And only a bit of ocean left that could be, hiding a bit of stuff. But beyond that, there's nothing, and you just go back on yourself. Again, speaking to Neil's question earlier.
Sounds more like stupidity than malice.
Screw you, I thought it was a great explanation.
No, it's a good explanation. It just sounds more like stupidity than malice.
It's like the Truman Show when they tell the kid there's nothing left to explore. Everything's already discovered. Go home now.
Exactly.
I saw a thing there very recently that it was about NASA and the forming of NASA. That I don't know how true it is, but supposedly NASA originally were interested in the discovery of what was in the oceans, and suddenly they just stopped doing that. Supposedly.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds
I don't know
about
what
right.
that means, but yeah.
Well, we were talking yesterday about how NASA are the masters and experts in everything. And I'm sure in oceanic research, I'm sure they were, according to you, until recently, for some reason, on the cutting edge, right? But now they're not. That's your point.
Yeah, they suddenly just stopped exploring the oceans. All of a sudden, just it finished. Stopped. Don't know why.
Okay. Well, I don't know either. I mean, I'm still subscribed to NASA. I rarely look at all their stuff, but I've still got their feeds coming into me. Just force of habit. I want to see the headlines that they're putting out. Maybe, I don't know. Like I say, I never read the articles anymore. But maybe I've mentioned this in the past. It used to be something that I'd go to sleep looking at. So just before nodding off, I'd go to my email, look at what NASA had published most recently. This is many years ago, and look at what they got to offer. And I'd look at their most recent photographs, which were all disclaimed. You know, it's not like they were lying. In many ways, that was the thing that sort of tipped me off. You know, when someone was like, no, they're never pictures, they're always artists' renditions. But they'd disclaim it. So you'd be looking at these feeds and it'd be like, here's an artist's rendition of what this launch will look like, this piece of equipment going into space will look like. So you're like, okay, I'm prepared for it being not a real photo, because if you had a photo of something out in space, you're like, what's taking the photo? So you accepted it on that ground. But at the end of reading the article or whatever, you didn't get anything actually real out of it. And that was very, you know, I was aware of that at the end of reading each article. And it left me with this sort of hollow, empty feeling. But they still managed to make me want to look at the next article each time. You know, you might get one every 2 or 3 days from, I've forgotten what it's called, Science at NASA, I think, something like that. Anyway, that's what I'd get through. And like I said, I detailed it in the past, the empty feeling that you get when you go through any NASA stuff.
It helps you go to sleep because you're spacing out.
It didn't. It actually made me ponder the, you know, that, like I say, I used to be a fanboy. Maybe I haven't mentioned this recently, but yeah, I used to be well into all of the space stuff. I was a big fan of everything that normies were a fan of. You know, all the Star Trek and the Star Wars and the Red Dwarf and all of that stuff.
Well, I heard Joe Rogan and Eddie Bravo, they used to watch them together. But it seems like Eddie Bravo, once he realized that they were fake, the CGI, and it was no real pictures, he moved away from it and started doing a little research. And Joe Rogan, he did not. He doubled down.
Speaking of CGI and pictures, once we're done with housekeeping, I got some slides.
Okay, shout out to Mike808 for hitting the super chat. Thank you very much indeed for the support, Mike. Really do appreciate it. Okay.
You know what I listen to often that puts me asleep is things about Bigfoot and stuff like that. It puts me asleep. I go into this happy place, Bigfoot, werewolves, that and that. Go into this happy. I don't listen to really dark stuff, but anything like that, anything that is, you know, like that, cryptid stuff, or any stories about Loch Ness monsters, that kind of stuff, but not really so much. Mostly Bigfoot and werewolves and stuff. That puts me asleep. I can't listen to it during the day. If I listen to it during the day, one second. If I listen to it during the day, I feel like going to sleep.
Well, yeah, because it gives your soul rest.
Very good. 100 people watching. How long have we been live? 20 minutes. That's about normal. Please share the show. The reason there's 100 people watching is because somebody somewhere, or a couple of you in the live stream right now, have shared this show, because it's certainly not getting promoted any other way. Thank you very much to you who have shared, but if you haven't, smash the share button, and then we'll get into this presentation from 10th Man.
Right. What about the rest of the housekeeping? Are we going to just go into the presentation?
20 minutes in after one question. I might bring back, if we completely die on our arse.
It was a fantastic question.
Yeah, well, that was always the case when it was asking for physical geometric sphere edges, back when we debunked them with the black swan. You know, we had a solid 2 years where that was the first housekeeping question. Now we've transitioned to asking for an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline. That's what the focus tends to be. And if you get 20 minutes, or if I, as a show host, get 20 minutes of discussion out of it, I'm like, yeah, we might segue back into housekeeping questions. But we might not. You know, we're on to a presentation. I am in no doubt that it's in regards to elevation angle acquisition, just looking at this first slide. So, yeah, man, I'm happy to hang with the first housekeeping question. I will always go through and we'll try to throughout the week. Right, I got your first slide.
I might bust your chops. I don't mind. It's not my business.
I'd rather you kept us on my toes. In that regard, I do want the housekeeping questions read. And as the name suggests, they should be sort of done and dusted within the first 5-10 minutes of the show. And when they're not, that's when I have to make a sort of decision. Do we carry on with this? Oh, I've gone to the... How many slides are there? There's quite a few.
Don't worry about it.
Well, the thing about it is that if you go through them in 5 minutes, it kind of, all you're really saying is there any evidence for this? Everyone goes no. Any evidence for this? Everyone goes no. And it just becomes kind of repetitive. But it's better when you actually talk about it. So you're better off only going through one or two of them through the whole hour, because then you actually speak about the thing, rather than just, because I find it just like everyone just goes no, no, no for all the questions, and we never speak about it. So if someone new are going to go, I don't know what they're saying no for. There must be some evidence, you know. So I think
Great
maybe
mind.
it's a good
That's
thing.
exactly, Brian, what I've been thinking in the last couple of days. I've been thinking, we go through the housekeeping questions, and back a year ago, 18 months ago, we got to a point where, about the same sort of stage, when we're like, no, we can't just keep going through them and just saying no, 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 no. We need to go through each housekeeping question and expand on how it's come to pass, how it defeats their argument, how it supports our argument, and then potentially move on if there's been enough time. But in this case, it's the first argument where I felt confident to say, I will stand by this as a flat earth proof. Now, prior to now, and I said this a couple of times recently, there's been other arguments that other people will stand by and put their rubber stamp on. And I'm not decrying any of them. They're all great arguments, and I would argue them. I'd use them in argument. But it's not like, I like that. I like that a lot. It's tidy. It's neat. It's not going to end in a massive discussion that takes 25 minutes from a fundy. None of them have sort of fulfilled a few criteria that I've been considering. And the main one is how quick it takes. How efficient is this argument? And when it comes to the elevation argument, as far as I'm concerned, it's the most efficient flat earth proof argument to date. And if someone says, no, the surface to air missile thing, that's definitely going to be, or surface to surface, that's going to be yielding as just a swift destruction of the globe and proof of a flat earth. I'd be like, okay, well, let's see how they pad out in terms of how quick we get the fundy to say, yeah, we're going to need a flat earth. Because to my knowledge, none of them get the fundies to say that. This is the only one where they've got to say they need a flat earth quite frequently along the road of the argument.
Well, that says to the epistemological power of a positive claim, doesn't it? Because this is the first positive claim I've heard that's not being, you can't refute it, That's just, that's what it is,
Yeah, it's undebunkable when you've got them telling you how flat they've got to make it, or how flat it needs to be to measure the angle, or they define an elevation angle, or they go through the 3 questions that QE laid out in terms of what you're doing when you're measuring an angle with a relationship to the ground for celestial navigation, and whether or not you're measuring an elevation angle and whether or not you can do that off a curved baseline. When you get to that point with a fundy, no is what you get, because no, you can't do it with a curved baseline. You need it to be flat. It is flat when you're using this methodology. The crazy notions that you have to correct it for historicity aren't used, and when they are, it's described as being laborious and unnecessary to do conversions that ultimately start with a flat earth angle measurement.
Right, but there's a difference between saying it's flat now or you believe it's a sphere.
Yeah.
But
Go on, Brian.
I was just going to say that this argument, the elevation angle argument, that is the greatest argument against seasoned anti-flat earthers. There is no greater argument, I don't think, against seasoned anti-flat earthers. For the general public, the airplane argument, I think, is better. But against the people we're against, there is no better than this.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah,
as an overriding subject, you can pull all sorts of elements and aspects of flight and air travel to argue almost any point that debunks the globe. So I would totally agree. With a normie, that's probably the best place to start. And I think you've mentioned this several times, Brian. You think that's when it started to fall apart, about 100 years ago, maybe more. But, as soon as you get people off the ground, suddenly we're not spinning, and you're not going to be accounting for the ground falling away, because if you think it is, you're going to crash into the ground when it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the most famous flat earthers in the past 30, 40 years was a very sought after large scale airline mechanic and engineer. Now they hide the man's portfolio and who he was. But the point is that it was how the airplanes flew was how he knew that it can't be a globe. He knew it couldn't be because how airplanes flew. It's just airplanes are handy for the average person, the everyday person. They will be on an airplane. They know someone has been on an airplane. They can research about an airplane. Whereas a sextant is going to boggle their mind and they won't want to deal with it. But the anti-flat earthers, they'll know when we say, how do you have a curved adjacent? They know they got nowhere to go. They have to come up with everything and every argument possible surrounding the sextant that doesn't deal with the surface.
Yeah.
And that's what they've been doing.
Right. And looking stupid in the process. Denying celestial navigation makes them look stupid. Because it's not a claim us flatties are making. It's something we're utilising, and the process is set in stone and well and truly utilised by both sides in the same manner. And if there are any disclaimers about being a sphere, they either don't work with the maths that's actually being used, or have long disclaimers about how this could work, but would take such a long time to convert these flat earth angles that nobody's doing this. We just do the basic trick. And here's how it's done with a flat straight line for your baseline, because it couldn't not be. If it was curved, you're not getting an angle. And if it's curving away in terms of the ground's actual physicality, then the line that you measure for the GP for the radius to the GP doesn't match the ground anymore. It's going to throw you off by a massive amount. And if they try and disclaim on the anti-flat earth side that they've got a geometric horizon to be calculating it from when they dip, then we've got a black swan argument that they've been telling us for 2 straight years how they haven't got a geometric horizon, how that line isn't straight and is always bent. It's not no Atmo day after all. So they're screwed every single way, which way. And that's why it's my favourite argument, because I know who comes here. And yeah, we might get the occasional person who comes in with, a crappy argument from 2015 because they're a newbie. But we tend to point out where they're using fallacy when that happens. In other words, we don't necessarily get into the complex arguments that are necessary to make an anti-flat earth and tell you how flat the earth is. Because that's what we have to take it to. I mean, it's gone to pretty far extremes after 7 years that I've been doing this. To have an argument that forces your opponent, who's not really your globe opponent, he's your fallen down the hill of finding out the earth's flat, denied it at the bottom, realised he's in hell, and then trying to scramble back up to the top, fighting everything with limbs hanging off and near death and denying the whole time that anything's wrong at all, in a serious amount of pain. You've got to fight with those zombies while you're just trying to make your way down the valley along the river. And as you encounter these zombies, you need something to pepper spray them off with, and the elevation angle argument is that argument. As you say, for normies, most of them will get here and go, well, I've got pictures from space, you stupid flat earther. You go, really? Well, I managed to explain a couple of days ago, actually today, but when this is live, we're live still, aren't we? Yeah. Today, I explained to my daughter while she was watching a SciShow Kids video about gas expanding into areas of volume, in this case a balloon, and how that expands out into the available volume should there be no balloon. I managed to explain to her in no uncertain terms how that debunks the idea of space, and she completely comprehended it without any difficulty whatsoever. So if my 5-year-old can understand how gas fills space, in line with the SciShow example that she's been given, and therefore space is fake, I would expect any normie to understand the same when they tell you that they've got pictures from that area. I've got a picture of Earth from space as a ball. Why would you think it's flat? Well, because the picture you think is a picture isn't a picture, because pictures can't come from Narnia, and space is Narnia. It's an area that doesn't exist in physical reality. It's an area that if it did exist, we'd all be dead, because the gas we're breathing would fill that space, in line with entropic law. Gas fills space. We've got gas. It's not filling that area of space. That's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics.
Yeah, and we're just going to say quickly, worse again, is the reason that it's not filling it is because you can't even have a vacuum without a container. And what's stopping it from equalizing and creating a very low pressure, a very low grade vacuum up high is temperature. And another thing you can't have without a container. So it's a 3-way destruction, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you guys about the normie thing.
Okay. Go on. What's your take?
Anybody, not necessarily, because normies is one thing, but anybody that has a competent philosophical understanding and can comprehend what words mean
Not normies.
will
Then.
know what
So that's not normies.
right, but that's in intellectual circles, and that's really what's going to matter in the end. Knows what an angle is. Now, when you introduce the sextant as an argument, you know, there's a little bit of we smashed up the wiggle room pretty much with the no geometric horizon. But as far as just using like the Eratosthenes method, you don't have to invoke a geometric horizon for that. I mean, it's just simple, measuring an angle. I think some of the stuff we talk about is because of the anti-flat earthers, and we're reacting to them instead of simplifying the message so that people can get the concept.
Indeed, and this has a great overlap. So I still agree with Brian, but I do think that if you're right and the intellectuals are the ones who are paying attention, as opposed to nobody other than the anti-flat earthers and people that they promote us to, you've got a limited audience. So therefore, you end up exactly as it's probably been positioned, where this corner of the internet is not flat Earth versus globe Earth. It's flat Earth versus anti-flat Earth. And both of those groups need to be kept well away from the normies. So while this might be an exceptional argument for an above-average normie, let's call it, an intellectual normie, to understand that you're going to need an angle, and that's two straight lines, not one line that's curved, because that doesn't work to give you angles. Well, that's fairly straightforward. I mean, like you say, I'd expect somebody with a reasonable degree of intelligence to understand how that relates to this argument if they've listened at all to the argument. But this is the point I should say, share the show when we've got 140 odd people watching, right? You know, because that's the only way you reach those people you're describing with this argument or any argument that we put forward. And whether I'm happy or not with the gateway people to the subject, in other words, your Mark Sargents, I wouldn't call Dave Weiss an entry-level person anymore, having listened to him recently. He's getting closer and closer to the tip of this spear. Anybody listen to Dave Weiss recently?
No. Hey, Phil Bill, join the show, Phil B.
I'll just do a quick shout out and then I'll say hello to Sleeping Warrior. Shout out to Ben White, who's become a member for 7 months. I didn't know you could put messages when you joined as a member, but there we go, he has. Phil B in the chat disagrees with gravity being a conceptual medium. Take it up with Einstein. Yeah, 4D pseudo-Riemannian 4 space-time bending would be your gravity. Maybe you didn't preface it in the right way, Ben. I don't know. I wasn't paying that close attention to the chat, although I have added it up with my half an eye on it. Thank you very much for joining as a member, though. Really appreciate the support. Hello, Sleeping Warrior.
Hello, boys and girls. I just thought I'd like to extend the invitation out to Phil B in chat. He says, quote, "You have no idea what a model means, and I guarantee you have not read Einstein's paper on general relativity or any of his follow-up work. I teach the model. I know it backwards. Phil B, please join us. I'd like to question and challenge your claimed knowledge on Einstein's theory of general relativity. I'd like to see exactly what you claim you know to be true. So, mic up. We'll have a good conversation.
You're asking me to moderate a discussion between you and Phil Bell. Wonderful. That sounds like fun.
I'm just letting people be aware that Phil Bell thinks he knows everything about Einstein's paper, and I'm just challenging him publicly so we could. I'm going to join literally for you, Phil. So I expect you to join and be courteous.
I don't tell him what you expect. If you want to join,
yes.
I don't care what you expect. Right. If you do want to join Phil, you have to join the live stream queue, and we'll move you into the live stream and unmute you. There is absolutely no obligation to do so if you don't want to. Don't care either way, as the host of the show. But if you do, it'll be you versus Anthony. I don't care about this. This isn't my subject, so I don't care.
And in the meantime, I'll just mic up, waiting patiently for Phil not to join.
Well,
he's under no obligation.
Chat,
Stop! I don't want to fall to their level. Just stop 1 second. Last comment from Anthony just has to get addressed. Right, I don't want anybody calling Phil a coward or any kind of crap like that, or listening to him if he says, no, I've got this, that, and the other on, or I haven't got a mic, or whatever he comes up with. I don't care. That doesn't mean he's anything. It doesn't mean anything. It's not relevant. If he does join and he puts forward a good argument, he might rip Anthony a new one based on his understanding of non-scientific pseudo-Ramonian fourth space model. I don't know. Maybe he will. I don't know. Who cares? But don't tell him what you expect. That doesn't matter. And if he doesn't join, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean he's anything. Okay? Let's just not ad hom Phil for what he does or doesn't do.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
Did they
Well, let
tell
him
us?
join.
Did they tell Phil the debate's over? We need a flat Earth to get angle measurements, or
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
he
for
might not
another
be
day
up
if
for
it does.
Well,
Nah, he's
that's a
if he
different
comes,
day.
he comes for gravity. Let's not expend out the subjects. I know you're all baying for blood. Shout out to
Well, it's very,
Godzilla.
very.
No, that's not it, Nathan.
Well, it's
He's
very
in the chat
simple.
talking to people,
Yeah,
calling
yeah.
people cute. Oh, you've been deceived. How cute. You now believe in flat Earth. He's a real tough guy in the show. Just come on. I'll go on mute and leave him alone with Anthony.
Okay, well, as much as Neil's now being that tough guy, he's projecting onto Phil. Very grateful to have you here, Phil. Smash the share button. Really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching. Please keep chatting away in my show. Phil is extremely courteous. If anything, I am vile to Phil. Like, beyond vile to Phil. And even though I'm vile to him, he manages to remain courteous in the chat. He never... Yeah, typically he'll sink to ad homs on the flat Earth versus globe Earth level. But that's typical. In other words, he's not some lower standard than normal anti-flat earthers. He's about average. Yeah? That's not societally average. Much, much, much lower than that. He's an anti-flat earther. But, you know, I don't want Phil getting crap for no reasonable reason. At Sleeping Warrior, Mucktoon. No. He's calling you out here because he wants you to come here, Phil. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Mucktoon, who will be heavily promoted by YouTube and do quite nicely in terms of the financial gains of having Anthony on his show, should pay Anthony to get him on. Given that what we had back in 2015 and 2016 as promotion has been directly passed over to anti-flat earthers as deemed by necessary by Congress. So we are now categorized as fringe, as flat earthers. You and Mucktoon are not. You will receive as much mainstream promotion that the algorithm and YouTube can offer. And more. Even though your tags and titles are the same as mine, I am fringe, Mucktoon is not. So he's going to profit nicely. If he wants to offer up a sum of money to Anthony, then that would be reasonable. In this respect, if you want to talk to Anthony, which would be your choice, Phil, then you can if you want to. The offer is there, the door is open. As for, no, come and play on my playground. Yeah, you want to drag him behind your bike shed, which will be highly profitable for Mucktoon, I'm sure.
Well, now that rumpused my presentation, can we get on with it? I'm falling asleep here.
My bad.
Hang on, I have something to say. Hang on.
I've got it queued. Just let 10th Man know that I definitely haven't forgotten. But 40 minutes into the show, still plenty of leeway for about, I guesstimate, a 14, 10-minute, so thereabouts presentation. I haven't forgotten you, 10th, I promise.
Okay, I'm going to go get a drink then. I've been waiting all this time thinking you're going to call me. I'll be back.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted, like, there's a lot of talk about Phil coming on and talking to Anthony here, and then him wanting Anthony to go to McTown's and all this. Never mind all that. It's very, very simple. It's not an agree and disagree situation. Einstein's relativity involves a made-up medium that doesn't exist. So, Phil, if you believe that gravity has anything to do with the size of what you call a mass, then you don't know what general relativity is. Because the size of the mass has nothing to do with what general relativity states. That would be a force of gravity, which is something superseded by general relativity. So if you think that the size of what you call a mass has any influence over what you think gravity is, then you don't know what gravity is claimed to be.
Well, Nathan did explain that they're going to be arguing over a made-up thing. Make believe.
And he's right.
Agreed.
Well, either way, it seems that he's only willing to debate Anthony in his safe space over on McToon's with a moderator that's on his side. Obviously, you'd need that being in the majority with the entirety of the Western world behind you in your religious belief in a sphere Earth. You need all the help you can get.
Yeah,
I
that's
would like-
true. It's like 10 against 1, and you want the 11th guy.
Yeah, we're the minority, right? So you're like, all right, little minority. Well, we want to drag you around in our own environment. So what we'll do is we'll call your minority tucked away in the corner of the internet platform an echo chamber and biased. Yeah, we're the minority opinion. What, you expect us to have the entirety of the Western world behind us? No, they're behind you. But what's that you say? Because we're the minority tucked away in the corner, we should come to you to be berated and controlled. Because what? What's the incentive again? Because we're the minority and you're in the majority, therefore we should be on your home soil. No, that seems unreasonable. Given that we're the underdog minority, shouldn't it be the case that you come to our home soil? Yeah? It's Atkins and Stanley versus Manchester United. And Manchester United saying, you pathetic underdogs, you can come and listen to our 100,000 supporters cheer at you and tell you how stupid you are. And Atkins and Stanley going, you know what, I'd rather just play you on our field with our 150 supporters watching and see how we actually work out without you having 100,000 people behind you, which is essentially what this metaphor works out to be. The massive Premiership football team demanding that the underdog, who's not even league rated, come to their stadium to be humiliated. It's like, well, if you're chasing after that non-rated, lower league, whatever you want to call it, team, if you want them, as opposed to the other way around, you should go to them. Not the other way around. Not demand they come to you because you want to humiliate them with 100,000 screaming voices behind you. But that's essentially the scenario we have. All right, as the underdog, we should kowtow to you and your massive amount of support with the Western world behind you. You need every advantage, do you? All right, I see. That's what Phil needs. He needs not only the entirety of the Western world behind him, he needs a biased moderator behind him as well to put his argument to us. How pathetic, Phil.
Well, I would like to hear him assert a center of mass on a flat plane now. That'll be interesting to hear.
Yeah.
How would that pad out in terms of you angling such, without him just begging the question immediately that the Earth is a sphere?
Well,
I don't.
You can't go to the center of mass if we're measuring a flat plane. You have to get past the flat plane before you start asserting how it works on a sphere. You know, that's what gravity is how it works on a sphere in their minds. So that's how they can keep hopping and dodging and duct taping and everything. But if it's not a sphere, it's just a big red herring fallacy anyway.
Well, how would Einstein's equivalence principle work on a sphere? You know what I mean? Fantasy and all it is. Come on. Do you know what I mean? It's Phil is a long, long way away from what you're talking about. Phil is so entrenched in the heliocentric model. It could be any length of time before Phil gets around to it, actually the stark light of day, where everything is measured on a flat plane. And that's why every single measurement for the globe has to have a tangent plane, regardless of how big it has to be.
Agreed, Brian. He's way far.
Neil, just speaking of tangent planes, is 10th man back with us now? He's gone to get a drink if he's not.
I'm glad we've had our fill of Phil.
Perfect. Right, I've got your first slide up, which starts with Zenith and at the top.
Yes, this is going to be a series of pictures, since the ballers can only understand pictures, because when we go to the methodology, it's a flat plane that the sextant needs. So let's go with pictures. This is obviously showing a rational horizon. Now, where would that be? Where could that be? We're going to find out as we see the series of pictures. But basically, be thinking about the celestial sphere, and where would this green disk plane B in relationship to the celestial sphere? And why would they have red arrows saying at the bottom, show zenith distance of 90 degrees? 90 degrees on a ball, not from the surface, but if you slice it in half, maybe. Next slide. So you got the celestial meridian, the zenith. Oh, there's that green sliced off plane. It's called the observer's horizon. And there's your altitude angle, being a flat plane. Pretty interesting pictures, ballers. Next slide. Oh boy. Look at this, baby. NCP, North Celestial Pole, SCP, South Celestial Pole, identical to the North Pole and the South Pole of a presupposed ball, and yet they can't help themselves but put that plane in the middle. Interesting. Next slide. Here it is again. The plane of the horizon. Where is the angle measurement to the body? The luminary. It needs a flat plane. You got to get a 90. Look where they got their 90. Where's Earth in this? Next. Okay, let's break it down. Well, we're on top of this presupposed ball of theirs, depicted as a circle here, by the way. And they've got several horizons. Well, we only know there's only one horizon when you look out, but they've got to have several because of the game they're playing. Where do they got the 90-degree box at? Why is it not on the surface? Why is it at the center? No one's at the center with a sextant of the circle. So now if you look out top, those are parallel lines. The celestial horizon matches the geoidal horizon, matches the sensible horizon. Oh, so you're going to get the same reading, I guess, because you're matching it from the plane that's at the center when it's really not at the center, because your sextant measurement's being done on top. And it can't work with a curve, because you can't get an elevation angle with a curved baseline. Next slide. Oh boy, it's getting busier. Altitude and zenith distance. Look at this. The wafer now, that plane at the center is on the sideways angle. You got prime vertical, vertical circle. Oh, it's called the rational horizon here. And then you got the co-altitude. You see a 90 degree. Oh, this is very interesting and very confusing if you live on a ball. Next slide. Okay, where? I guess someone is at the center taking the sextant measurement because that's the way they're showing it. The observer's position is on top. And it's got a matching parallel level horizontal line. So you could transpose it one way to the other. This is very interesting. That rational horizon is now called the celestial horizon. And then there's the geodal horizon. I wonder if that name changes later. Okay, keep going. I think this is the same slide twice. Wow. Look at this celestial sphere, the angles from the center again, prime meridian. Very confusing. Oh, there's the equator. That's the celestial equator, which matches with the Earth's equator if you think you live on a sphere. Next slide. Okay. Sensible horizon, visible horizon, geographical horizon. Was that the same as the geoidal, I guess? I don't know. I mean, they got so many names. It's very confusing if you're a baller, especially when you can't get an angle from this picture. You have to go to the center to get it according to your model, but no one's at the center getting it. Next picture. Another confusing azimuth, similar to the last one, with a plane, equatorial plane matching the center of the ball Earth equatorial plane right there. But again, you see a 90, you need a flat surface. Next slide. Okay, maybe this will help. Observer's horizon, geoidal horizon. picture of a submarine. Figure 2.7, the Nautical Almanac and the site reduction tables assume that the sites are taken at sea level. For instance, from the periscope of a submarine barely emerging above the water. Figure 2.8, below. The height of the observer eye above sea level determines dip. This angle must be removed from the altitude of the celestial body above the horizon that is measured with a sextant. Where is it measured?
One sec. In this picture, it's describing it as observer's horizon. And according to this, you've got an eyeball with a straight line to a tangent point on a sphere. So it's claiming in this description that the observer's horizon is a geometric horizon. Well, no. What is it? No Atmo Day? We've debunked this.
Yeah, and rational horizon is on top now instead of at the center, as we saw earlier. So these are changing horizons as they wish.
And don't forget the geoidal horizon.
Yeah. Well, here's the point. Go to the next slide. See what they got to do? They got to do all this to confuse them with pictures when they clearly show an equatorial plane and angles having to work only from a plane. But where did they get that? They got that from the real surface of Earth, transposed it to the center, and played around with pictures. But in their methodology, if the ballers could ever read.
Hold on a second. This contradicts the last image. So if you take observer's eye and draw a line along what is marked as the visible horizon. Yeah? Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's a straight line that you're acquiring these angles from. All of the dip and angle lines come down to this line, right? So that's the line we're using, the visible horizon. Now, if you look, they've got the geometrical horizon marked. That's the one that dips down to a tangent point on the surface of the sphere, right? And it's even, it's got terrestrial refraction marked as the account for the dip. But they're saying in this diagram that the observer's eye and the visible horizon is not the geometric horizon. It's saying that what you see, visible, is not geometric. Now, if I go back one diagram, they've got observer's horizon marked as the geometric horizon. The point where your eye meets a tangent point of the sphere, that's claimed to be the observer's horizon. That would be the horizon you're observing. In this one, the horizon that you're observing, the visible horizon, is not the geometric horizon. So you've got a massive contradiction in terms of what they're describing. This one very much utilises a flat plane and calls it the visible horizon based on this flat line, meeting at a 90 degree to what they're defining as the celestial equator line, right? Well, observer's eye with a flat plane along the top isn't a dipping tangent point or tangent line meeting at a point of the geometric sphere edge horizon. They've got them labelled completely differently. Not only that, what, terrestrial refraction needs to be accounted for? Why? If this is the visible horizon, terrestrial refraction is the account for what, a non-visible horizon? We were being told that this account was because what you see is refracted, but yet what we're actually seeing isn't refracted and is being used with the angle measurements. So in other words, what's this geometric horizon and terrestrial refraction doing down here when the visible horizon's got nothing to do with it? We can already see it, it's already a horizon, and it's got sod all to do with the tangent point. Definitely not being marked as visible in here, so we're not seeing a tangent point. Hey, Roofy! Hey, Roofy! In your maths, you seem to be back calculating dip from a geometric horizon you think's visible, suddenly, even though we debunked it 2 years ago. But yet in this one, we've got a marked as visible horizon that's got sod all to do with Earth curve. Check it out, visible horizon. It's got nothing to do with this point. But it is where you're going to be measuring the angles to, according to this diagram. So they've got a complete cluster screw, 10th man. You're absolutely right. That nonsense 12-step process you just took us through was the convolution from acquisition of a angle measurement from a flat line, and that's what we've absolutely got, to this complete horse crap, presumably brought to you by fundies on a sphere Earth. Got your
And
last
don't
diagram.
forget,
Figure B.
yeah. Don't forget, they already told us the nautical almanac and the tables are pre-calculated from the center where they have an equatorial plane. So it's never coming off of that round curved surface on top.
Yeah, the angle measurements come from a flat Earth at the centre of your presupposed spherical Earth. So the only place that you can match up actual angle measurements with where they would work on a sphere is if you cut the sphere in half and stood in the middle of the core. Now, obviously, you're not going to cut the sphere in half and stand in the middle of the core. You are going to stand on the surface and use these angle measurements without any conversion required because you've already got a flat straight line. Absolutely would require plenty of conversion to be done, not used as is, two straight lines making an angle, as is on a flat Earth. Not as is if the ground's curving away from you. You've got to do a lot of things to get that to work. And it doesn't. And the process that we've been shown starts with the flat Earth angle measurement and then converts it to sphericity in a laborious way that takes a long time and nobody uses. So you're going to have to take this equatorial plane, flat plane you're measuring the angle from, and you might be able to infer that the angle along the tool is actually the surface of Earth, but really you're just measuring a flat Earth along this line and a star on this line. Now, you might want to think that you're standing in the middle of a sphere when you get this angle, but really you're just standing on the surface. So what does this celestial sphere and equatorial horizon and plane in the middle of it all actually mean? Well, it means that you would have to be the person stood in this point. So you don't have to think
Like
of all
the
this
last-
being solid ground then. You're just standing on this plane.
My last slide will show that. Go to the next slide. So what they have is alt-as, altitude azimuth horizontal coordinate system, where the truth comes out. This is what's happening. And you can take a protractor and overlay it on this and it'll be perfect. You get angles, everything works. It's just that bottom half has to go away because that's where they're lying to you. So
You know what
here's
you
that
can do?
person stood in the middle.
Well, in this diagram, what you can do is I can superimpose, instead of a woman standing here, pointing at what she's going to be measuring with her sextant, you can just put a globe Earth, half a globe Earth, or a full globe Earth in the middle of this diagram and say, oh yeah, well actually in the centre of the presupposed spherical Earth that I've just drawn on this diagram, that's where the angle's measured from, and we're standing out here on the surface of it. Because the angle that we're measuring, we can project it. In fact, I'll draw the sphere along where it says 60 degrees. I'll make that into a sphere Earth. Because the curve of the tool we're using is actually the ground we're standing on. Yeah, the angle only then works from the centre of that globe that I'm drawing around this woman right now. But that's how they've done it. Because the measurement is being done this way on a flat plane. And the diagrams prove it. Yeah, they tilt that plane when you've got this azimuth and zenith angle diagram. You've got zenith angle, and then you've got this rational horizon. Why is it tilted at a strange angle? Well, just to confuse you, because this is what it actually represents. But you could draw a globe in the middle of this, but you'll still be taking the angle from a flat plane to call the globe around the globe, because you're going to be hijacking this flat Earth angle measurement that's drawn in this last diagram. Excellent presentation, by the way, 10th man.
One last slide to round it off the show. Remember this slide early in 2021?
Yes.
There it is. Just put that woman right in that middle.
Would that be an elevation angle?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about when we say an elevation angle proves that the Earth is flat. This is what this woman is pointing at. This is an elevation angle measurement, and it requires a flat baseline. Anybody else got anything to add?
I've got a question.
I've
I've got a question.
Go on.
10th. Apparently, when this topic comes up, a common retort that I see from the anti-flat earthers is that we don't know the difference between a circle and a disc, because they don't like to reference the circle of equal altitude as being everything that's in the middle. They want it to be just the outer edge, the outer, you've got it as brown or dark green on there, but not the coloured bit in the middle, because that's not a circle, that's a disc. What's your response?
I don't mind calling it a disc of equal altitude.
No, it can't be a disc. A disc would mean that you segmented the ball to create. A disc is still flat.
Yeah, but they're saying
convex
it's not the
disc.
disc. They're saying
but
it's not the disc. It's only the outside edge.
That's a hoop.
But that still creates.
You can't have a hoop of equal altitude. With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, smashed the PayPal link and crypto link and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!